This is a review of the single player experience of this game. Halo 4, now on PC, something I always hoped for, at least for the whole Halo series, but was it worth it? Halo 4 was the first Halo not developed by Bungie, who at the time was very open about their desire for Halo 3 to be the last entry in the series, being the reason why the last two games they made for Microsoft, Reach and ODST, were prequels. So eventually Bungie left Microsoft and joined Activision to work on their new sci-fi franchise, since Microsoft just wanted more Halos, which is a whole story unto itself given they're not with Activision anymore. But we're not here to talk about what happened to Bungie, but what happened to the Halo series after Bungie left. And here comes 343 Industries, a developer studio owned by Microsoft at the time, a very new studio as Halo 4 was their first major game, but it wasn't without talent as the team picked up several ex-Pandemic developers, a studio that went defunct around the time Halo 4 began development. Pandemic, for those unaware, was the studio behind the original Star Wars Battlefront series, and also famous for being one of the many studios killed by EA. But enough about history. How is Halo 4 as a game? But hopefully this opening wasn't for nothing and will help understand my disconnect with this game and its odd gameplay decisions. First, the story of Halo 4 takes place 4 years after Halo 3. Master Chief has been in cryo sleep and he has been woken up by Cortana as the ship he is on is being invaded by the Covenant, where we get this bombastic opening gameplay of them all being sucked into a gravity well. That sets up the new plot and new villains, the Prometheans. And I felt that was enough as a motivation for him, but they also add this whole plot of Cortana being corrupted, which I think ended up being more detrimental than helpful. Without spoiling it, it made for some really odd moments, especially between Master Chief and Cortana. I would say overall I didn't hate the story, I just wasn't very engaged with it. I also think it's important to note that I'm not very informed on Halo lore or anything of the sort. I have played through Halo 1 and 2 a couple of times, but I've only played the rest of the series now as it's been coming out on PC with the Master Chief Collection. So if there's some lore inconsistencies and plot holes, I would not be the one to identify them here. Moving on to the graphics, it looks good in general. Everything is a little bit more detailed, but it's not without its problems that were brought up upon by this level of detail, especially around color and lighting. Now things just blend in a way it doesn't feel purposeful. The light in general is a lot more yellowy and bloomy, which of course is partly my personal opinion, but I think it looks worse than the previous Halo entries with their more natural take on lighting. Even with ODST, who did have more bloomy lighting as well, it felt justified there due to the storytelling. Here though, the lighting ends up color coding everything, making it hard to tell things apart. This is very noticeable with large metallic looking buildings which are more detailed but also blend into the environment, which in the case of these massive buildings in the middle of mostly plains of green vegetation shouldn't happen, I think. This problem extends to the gameplay with the enemy colors. While they might be more detailed in their character models, noticeably so, but now they also have a lot more darker and less vibrant colors, which makes them harder to tell apart in combat. I also found picking up guns from the floor a lot harder because of this, which was never a problem with the older games. While I don't think this game looks bad in the slightest, it is very detailed and impressive for an Xbox 360 game, but as a Halo game, I think it lost a lot of its charm and appeal in this quest for some sort of realism, and it obviously ended up being detrimental in the gameplay department as well. Which leads me to talk about said gameplay. This is definitely the hardest part because it's a Halo game, but it's also not. A lot has been changed, but it's so subtle that it's like I feel crazy as a person trying to explain. Health goes down a lot faster, guns in general feel like they have less bullets, and you can now sprint. It's like it's trying to go for a more Call of Duty feeling, and in general it just feels worse, except when you're playing with the new enemies. It just doesn't feel balanced for the old type of enemies and the classic type of Halo gameplay. The low ammo and health means it's rather easy to be left in a bad situation given the more open maps of Halo games. Again, it just feels unbalanced, where I said it felt good with the new characters, and it does. They die fast and have big weak spots to go with the more fast-paced intent of this game. Levels with them also tend to be slightly more narrower. Not to say they don't still have that kind of open map Halo style, but they're just a lot more corridors. And it just fits this new type of gameplay a lot better. Problem is, there's only 3 new enemy types, with some slight variations within that. And the new guns, while going back to the graphics thing, they look very detailed and have cool animation, but they just kind of feel like other weapons that were already in the game. As a Halo game, there is also vehicle combat, and this one is okay. And honestly, that might be because it feels a lot like the older games. The problem for me here is the maps themselves. They just feel too linear. It loses a lot of its feeling of being in an open battlefield, now feeling a lot more linear. The original Halo games were also linear, but the way the maps were built made the world feel a lot more open and realistic than it actually was. That kinda shows what Halo 4 is overall. It's a product of its time. It's a linear first-person shooter with an identity problem, made worse by the fact that it came out at a time where people were getting tired of these short linear campaigns. The core of the game still feels good, obviously. The people working on this game know how an FPS works and should feel, but they might not know or maybe not like how Halo works, which is disappointing. And I'm giving this one a 6 out of 10. It's not that bad, but it's really not that good either. It's closer to a 5 than a 7 because it's a Halo game. It still wouldn't be a 7 even if it had a different name, like, Space Warrior 69, but I would feel a lot better about it. Recommending this game though, well, if you like Halo passively, or maybe you didn't like older Halo games but didn't hate them, then maybe you might get enjoyment out of this one. And at $10, it's not a big investment, so if it's something you're looking for, then sure, go for it. And if you're a big Halo fan, then realistically you already played this game and you already have your own opinions about it. And that's about it. Originally I was gonna review the whole Master Chief collection, but then I got into the Yakuza series and that's been sucking up all of my time. So, that never happened. Regardless, I reviewed this game and hopefully it was helpful to you who is looking to play Halo series now that it's come to PC. And yeah, have a good one and subscribe and like and all the stuff, and goodbye.